11月23号，中国新疆的历史与发展，中国历代中央政权治理新疆地区国际学术研讨会在新疆举办，聚焦中国历代中央政权对新疆地区治理的历史经验和启示。200余位海内外专家学者开展多视角、跨学科、全方位交流。中国外文局外文出版社荣誉英文主编大卫·福格森在主旨发言中表示，美西方反华势力对中国新疆进行的抹黑和污蔑都是子虚乌有、荒诞可笑的。如何应对西方公众的误解和敌意，对外讲好中国新疆故事？专访大卫·福格森。
Nice to meet you, Mr. David Ferguson.
It's a pleasure to be here, Don. Thank you for the invitation.
We appreciate for your participation in our interview. How do you evaluate the symposium?
I think that this type of event is very important because China needs to bring people together to discuss important issues that we can then go out and tell to the world that paint a picture of China which is accurate and appealing.
We have noticed that in your speech you have mentioned the frequent stigmatization of Xinjiang by some Western media, which is widely recognized by the Western public. So why is this the case?
Well, I think the fundamental reason for current Western attacks on China comes down to an inability on the part of the West to accept that the world is changing. We're becoming a multipolar world. Countries and regions which were previously dominated by and dictated to by the West are now starting to stand up on their own 2 feet, and they expect to have a voice in world affairs, particularly in the case of China. I think that the developed West is having a great deal of difficulty in understanding that and coping with that. I used the analogy in my speech, an athlete who has never lost a race and doesn't know how to lose races. The fact of the matter is, on the international stage, everyone has a right to run and everyone has a right to run fast. And the West needs to understand that, but at the moment they don't. So they're trying to undermine the other athletes rather than compete with them and run against them fairly.
What are the reasons behind the Western public's perception?
The simple fact is that 99% of people in the West have never been to China. So the only things that they think they know about China are the stories that they're told by the politicians and their media. Everything that they read about China is negative. Anybody like me who's come here, who's worked here, who's lived here, who's spent time here, who's travelled in the country. So you have a very large audience of very poorly informed people who now have a built-in prejudice. No ordinary person has a natural prejudice against other people. It's something that has to be created, and it has been created.
What are your thoughts on Western texts used to create a mythology?
You can group them into a set of different categories. There are so-called human rights organizations which create reports and stories about what's supposed to be happening here in Xinjiang. Almost all of these organizations are in some way sponsored or funded by the CIA through a sub-organization which is known as the National Endowment for Democracy, which spends all its time traveling around the world, creating problems, not just in China, not just in Xinjiang, but in any country where the US perceives that it has a geopolitical interest. So that's one category. Then you have the category of the media and the politicians who pick up on the stories from the human rights organizations, who pick up on the stories from the individuals, and who amplify them. American politician stands up and makes a statement in public, the media follow on and create headlines that day or the following day, and these are thrown at the audience. So you've got these different categories of tactic, each of which has its mechanisms and tools, and each of which attacks the audience in various different ways. China, Xinjiang, is a good subject for Western politicians to talk about now because it's an easy win. They're talking to a very receptive audience. Western politicians have to buy votes. China's political system, Chinese politicians don't waste the time trying to buy votes. And if you're trying to buy votes, what do? You look for the easiest targets. You look for the targets where you don't need to have any kind of solid discourse, any kind of rational argument. And in terms of China, in terms of Xinjiang, all you need is headlines. So certainly any Western politician sees China, sees Xinjiang as an easy opportunity to look good, an easy opportunity to harvest votes.
So you say they create a mythology.
Yes, I call it a mythology because there's next to no truth in it.
大卫·福格森，中国外文局外文出版社荣誉英文主编，参与习近平谈治国理政第1至4卷、习近平著作选读等多部中国领导人的重要著作、政府白皮书及中国主题图书的英译文编辑工作，撰写多部当代中国主题图书。在本次研讨会的主旨发言中，大卫·福格森以新疆反驳西方谎言为内容，指出应区分西方的理性误解与主观敌意。
The hostility towards China in the West is a deliberately orchestrated hostility that operates on a completely different level. It's not created by rational means, it's created by emotional means, by creating an emotional prejudice. So it's something subliminal. And the only way that you can remedy that is by acting on the same level as it has been created. And that means that China has to learn a different discourse. They have to learn how to address an audience on an emotional and a subliminal level.
How should we respond to the misunderstanding and the hostility of the Western public?
Not everyone out there is hostile. There is a group out there who have a positive view of China. So if we can keep these people better informed, we can maybe switch them over. And I saw a study recently which showed that in the UK, trust in politicians is 9%. 9% of the public trust their politicians. And that's something that we can take advantage of. If we can tell stories that counter the Western mythology, as long as we can get these stories to the right people. And the easiest people to get them to are people who actually have some affinity towards China because they'll listen to us. But if we can strengthen their beliefs, if we can strengthen their understanding, then they can represent our views to a wider audience in their own country. China has a lot of friends throughout the world, and China needs to consolidate its friendships. It needs to build up and strengthen its friendships, and it's already doing that through mechanisms like the Belt and Road and the global community of shared future. So the more friends that you can build, and the stronger friendships you can build, the more you reinforce your position, and gradually your circle of friends gets bigger.
Are you willing to seek out the reality of Xinjiang and share your experience with others?
I very much look forward to doing that, but I also spend a lot of time writing books. So I've written, I think, about 10 books about modern China. Is a possibility next year that I might be invited to write a book about Xinjiang. I have to travel extensively, I have to spend a lot of time here, I have to meet people here, I have to have a proper understanding. I need to be able to talk about and write about things that I understand properly. So if that goes ahead, then hopefully next year I will spend a lot more time here, I will get to know the place properly, and I will be able to be an advocate for Xinjiang